All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our, what's today, May 5th. Can you believe it's already May? Trauma Administrators Committee meeting. Hopefully everyone is having a great start to your week. Please, if you have not already signed in, go ahead and scan the QR code. Make sure you are getting credit for being here. Let's see, we've got a decent crowd. Hopefully we'll get a few more folks that will join on here in just a minute, and we'll make sure we put this QR code up again before the end of the meeting. Also, maybe we can drop it in the chat too, so that people can see. But we've got a pretty full agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First item of on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from February 21st. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those as they were sent out. Do I have a motion?
This is Damian Scott. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, any discussion? Well, do we need a second? Sorry.
This is Pam Vandenberg. I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion, additions, edits? All right, then. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. We have approved our previous meeting minutes. Next, we'll have the Georgia Trauma Commission update.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Just a couple brief updates, primarily around finance. The legislative session ended just about a month ago, and the budget for the year came down almost to the wire, 10 o'clock. I think that was earlier than last year on sine die, the last day of the legislative session. So the good news to share with everyone is that we got an additional $4 million again this year. If you recall, last year we did the system stabilization proposal, the $61 million ask, which we actually had a couple of options with that, but it just goes to show you have to ask for a lot of money to get a little. So we did, the biggest win, I think, was that the language that was included in that original increase was, it was part of a multi-year system stabilization. So, and again, we've inquired about, how long should we expect to get that additional 4 million? And the response to us was just that it will be there while it's there. So we don't know how much longer that will last. So we're not counting on it, but we did get it again this year. So, so great there. So with that, with the budget being approved by the legislators, we now are moving into budget mode in the commission. So we actually have a finance call later this afternoon to go over the 2026 budget. We did, the commission did, or the finance committee did already approve the reallocation plan. What we do is every year, if we have initiatives that don't move forward, we sort of pull all that money and then we divide it up between the trauma centers. This is what results in your amended contract. So usually you do get a little bit of extra money that includes any reallocation, plus we get the fireworks revenue that we get. We don't get that up front, so we don't count on that. And usually the amount that we get is not what, it's usually a little bit more than what is included in the budget, because they reconcile that after. So that usually hits us somewhere around the October timeframe. And then again, we just do that as an amendment to your contract. And then unless Katie has anything else, or Regina, that is pretty much it. Finance and getting your contracts together. Now we are doing a major contract overhaul this year, trying to weed out some of the old language. There are new templates within state government that they're using. So we want to sort of modernize what we're doing and make the PBP piece a little bit more readable and user-friendly in your contracts, if you will. So your contracts, we aim to get those out by June 1st. They may be a little bit delayed because we are working on that. So just ask for your patience with that, but we'll get those out to you as soon as we can.
All right, any questions about any of those commission updates or comments? Very good. We will roll over into our new business. Then Liz can keep it rolling with the FY26 Trauma Center pay for PBP updates, proposed PBP updates.
Sounds good. Thank you. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Gabby to give you all an update on this because she's done amazing work on assembling the group to work on this. And she'll give you kind of like a high level overview of how this process went. So Gabby, if you want to jump in there.
Sure. So I did send this out last week in your meeting packet. So it is available if you want to go into the nitty-gritty details. But we wanted to emphasize that the PBP is stakeholder reviewed. We did review it at every committee meeting, level 3, level 4, GCTE, administrators, trauma medical directors did have some time constraints. So we did send it out via email rather than a discussion. And it was a 2-week open comment period. So I did provide you the list of feedback that we got and the PBP work group recommendations. A lot of it was just adding clarification to the language. I'm going to highlight some big additions, which is adding a level 3 registrar attendance to the National TQIP in-person meeting. Rather than in person, we're going to encourage registrars attend virtually, and this is again for level 3s. We will look at possible additions to level 4 centers, but we want to get more feedback from the level 3 and level 4 centers. And then another big edit was the removal of the yearly NTDS data submission for level 4 centers. We did get feedback that that was not a valuable requirement for them. So we removed it. And so now the total risk percentage for level 4 centers decreased by 2%. So it was 19% total at risk. Now it's 17% for level 4 centers. Any other recommendations or feedback, Liz, that you wanted to highlight? Those were the 2 big changes that came about from the open comment period.
Yeah, I think just that we're grateful for the feedback that we got from level 4s about that there really is there's nothing that's given back from the ACS to the level 4s. Level 4s do not participate in any sort of benchmarking with the ACS like the level 1, 2s, and 3s, 1s, 2s, and 3s do. And there used to be just a summary report that was given back, but that's not the case. And until that changes, and there's a cost that's actually associated with submitting data to the ACS. So we don't want level 4s who get the least amount in the pot to have to pay for submissions when they're not getting anything back. So thankfully, we have a great relationship with the ACS, and I've seen them at 2 meetings the last 2 weeks, 2 national meetings. So they know that this is a gap and that they want to try to do more to support rural and give some sort of feedback, but that's going to take a while. They are standing up a rural pillar. So we wanted to alleviate anyone from having to pay the fee. And the submission process, I don't think was that easy on your end. So hopefully all that will be mitigated by just removing that. We'll keep our eye on that. If something does come out, we certainly don't want you to miss out. And in future contracts, we can look at, similar to how we offset the cost for level 3 TQIP participation, we can potentially offset the cost. I'm sure the commission would be supportive of that in light of wanting to support rural. So stay tuned on that.
And then with the PVP Excel sheet, it will have a change log on there. So as we've mentioned before, it's going to be reformatted. So it's going to look like MT quips with tiers added to those criteria. And then as far as additions, these are the additions that are going to be added overall. So you're going to have those outcome measures, the time to first dose VTE, and then surgical repair. We added a level 4 requirement for trauma registry professional continuing education, and then adding again that registrar for level 3s for virtual national TQIP. We did remove a couple criteria that because we saw that would just be GTC contract requirements, or that they weren't valuable or beneficial, or already ACS requirements, so there's no need to have it as PPP. A lot of clarification on language are the criteria edits, so nothing really substantial here. And then due to the introduction of the tiered metrics, there are a lot of percentage adjustments, which are highlighted in red in that PVP workbook. And then from the PVP work group, just some PVP considerations for the future, exploring that TQIP attendance option for level 4 centers. We got a lot of feedback previously on the TND COT membership. So we'll discuss that with the TND committee. We want to develop a statewide data abstractor education initiative. And then we're looking into developing supplemental reference documents for that PVP criteria. And thank you to our work group members. We couldn't do it without them. And I think that's it, unless there are any questions regarding PVP.
We put out a call for work group members, so that what you see there is the lone brave folks who put themselves out there, and we're really grateful for all of you supporting your staff and your folks to be involved in that.
So when will, and sorry if you said this, when will this be finalized, and or is it finalized already?
Great question. So I believe it's on the agenda for the finance committee this afternoon. And once the finance committee approves it, then it will go to the full commission to approve in 2 weeks,
yeah.
right? And then we will get cooking on putting it into your contracts for the July 1st start, but we can probably post it to the website once it's commission approved, so everybody can see the changes and prepare. And not that there's anything huge to prepare for, but so everybody can have an awareness, and it can be out there for circulation prior to, so you're not waiting for your contract to see it, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think so. I think if we're able to post it as soon as we can, I think that'd be great.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, and certainly thank you to the work group members. Again, sometimes being on those committees and work groups can be thankless tasks. So wanna make sure I add my thank you to everyone who did that. Okay, moving right along then, our next update will be on the Trauma Center Finance KPI worksheet.
Okay, Gabby's gonna pull up another couple of, oh, it's in PowerPoint, sorry, I should have saved it as PDF. Yeah, there you go. Can y'all see that okay?
Yes.
Sorry, it's coming up so huge on our screen here. Just a refresher, of, where we're, oh, it looks like it got rid of the map on the right somehow. That's so crazy. Oh, there we go. Okay. Just to refresh everybody, you know, since the inception of the commission, we've made tremendous progress in expanding the trauma system. You can see where we were at in 07 on the left, the gray areas highly, see the little dots are the trauma centers, and I can send this out after the meeting because you all did not have this in your packet. But the dark gray circles represent an hour drive time to any trauma center, as I said, indicated by the dots on the map. The lighter gray expands that 1 hour drive for level 4 centers. The reason it's lighter gray is because level fours aren't definitive care, but they do get you access to into the system. So this is a huge success story. So next slide. This just shows you how we've expanded the number and type of centers over time. And then the next slide shows that this is from our data.
Now, Liz, the slides are not progressing. I don't know if that's.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
Let's see.
Oh, it might be on your, since we're projecting, it might not be.
Let me just share this as that. And it should work.
Sorry, bear with us 1 second.
No worries.
This is the reason for saving it as PDF.
May have to progress like this.
Okay. Can you guys see that now?
Yes.
Okay, and then will it go, is it on the severely injured treated at designated trauma centers 03 to 2020?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And then advance. Okay, can you see the age adjusted?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've improved the number of severely injured patients that are going to designated trauma centers, as you saw on that line graph, from 64% to 93%. So that's tremendous progress. And then whereas when we had our 2008 first system consult visit, our mortality rate for injuries was woefully well above the national average. And this is just CDC data, so anybody can pull this off the CDC whiskers system. Now we're 6% below, meaning we're 6% better than the national average. So success story. And then next slide shows you just an overview, because I'm not sure how much this group knows about it, but what our super speeder annual revenues look like. You can see in the super speeder started in around 2010 initially, very slow to kind of ramp up, but then got up to the 18 to 20 million. Now, we weren't allocated all of that money initially. We only got a portion of it. Now, due to the enactment of the trust fund a couple years ago, we get all of these funds. And next slide shows the fireworks excise tax that started in 2017, and that has slowly ramped up over time, and each year it gets a little bit higher. And then the next slide shows you where our budget allocations go. So what you guys see here is that the trauma centers, by and large, get the biggest share of the pie. We have some money that goes into system development, and what that is typically the RTACs. Each RTAC has a RTAC coordinator that is contracted with the Trauma Commission. That is GQIP and any other system initiatives that we have. And then operations include everything about the staff and everything from tech equipment to the office rental, etc. But this is where we've sat for the past couple years at about just under 24 million before we got the additional 4 million. And then in the next slide shows you, well, we've made significant progress, but we really want future state. We want to surely expand where we can. Most gains are going to be in the level 4 realm, but important to pull those rural centers in, because again, that at least gives the patient access into the system and rapid transport to definitive care. So to do that, next slide, we need to have more funding. So how do we grow without impacting all of you that are on the phone, that are on this call? We don't want to take away from the existing centers. We finally got rural level 3s and 4s where they need to be in terms of funding. So again, it's very fragile. And that's when we came up with the ask. And the next slide shows you what we did was we based that 61 million ask on our own data around readiness costs, which is why that readiness cost survey that's going on right now is so critical, because it's going to show not only the change in costs from the last time we did it, which was in 2016 to now, but it's also going to show what did the requiring ACS verification, what kind of impact did that have on readiness costs? And as you are all well aware, now we have level 3 and level 4 readiness cost data. This is the first data that's been published in the nation. We publish that under open access. Anybody can get access to that. And I believe it's on our website as well too. And next slide. And many of you are aware of this. This is our one pager that we put together and kind of just underscoring the need for better funding for the system. And next slide. This is really where the rubber meets the road here, is that at inception, when we got that first bolus of money, that was the $60 million, we were at about half readiness. So if you were ever wondering, where did that $60 million come from? We were targeting again to get in that half readiness cost covered. You can see this, you always hear Dr. Ashley talk about 7 cents on the dollar. It's the best bang for the buck trauma system investment. So your readiness funding that's in your contract historically has been about 7 cents on the dollar. So we wanted to try to get closer to that 50%. So that's where that 61 million came from. So next slide shows you, we know that that was a huge price tag. So we came up with sort of a phased approach. So, we would certainly love to get to that 50% covered. Now, the whole time we kept the level 4s at 100% because their readiness costs were so minimal and we didn't have a lot of data on level 4 readiness. We suspect that it's probably higher than the 81,000 that we got from the data that we got from that. But, given that that's the biggest forward expansion or future expansion that we will do, we wanted to make sure that folks were incentivized to come into the system. So keeping those at 100%. So one of the questions that we got was, well, don't trauma centers make enough money from activation fees? And I got to say, this was a little bit surprising because, we didn't really know how much folks would know about activation fees. And next slide, or that they were even there. So I think unanticipated question, but how to find the answer. So that's where, excuse me, that's where the need, and next slide, to look at, well, how is everyone doing? And it's critical to note that in the code that created the commission, there is language in there that the trauma trust fund shall be the payer of last resort. So this is why this was really important. So we partnered with TCAA, who are the experts really in trauma center reimbursement, to really understand. To answer that question, we needed to know the degree of success or challenge each center really had with capturing the claims from a systems perspective. So aggregating that. And we wanted to develop 2 system level finance KPIs that we could track and kind of understand this better. And next slide. And you guys know the rest of this. We did the 2-part webinar series in August and November. We were very inclusive with our audience, but mostly we wanted to get those billing and coding people at the table because they're the ones that really need to understand how this needs to be done. And the next slide. So we asked you, and you guys came through in a big way, and we appreciate that, to look at 10% of your trauma team activation responses or 20 cases at a minimum, because we needed enough to draw some sort of conclusions from. And the next slide just shows you what the KPI worksheet looks like. I programmed an example in there so that the formulas could carry through. And the next slide shows you the 2 KPI key performance indicators. The first one was just collecting this. Apparently somebody thought at one point in time that on the patient admission type that everybody has to capture, this is on the uniform discharge data set, is the patient type, which is supposed to be type 5 if you're a trauma center. So this is on what's known as field locator 14 on the patient registration, and type 5 is trauma, not to be confused as I believe it's type 1 for emergency. So if you're a trauma center, you're supposed to be using that type 5 if it's a trauma patient I can tell you that looking at the entire discharge data set, because we've done other analyses for other things, there are non-trauma centers that are using type 5, and not all trauma centers are using type 5. So lots of variability. And the KPI number 2 on the next slide is to measure the percent of, for your trauma team activation responses, were you including the charge on the claim? And so the next slide, this is really the nuts and bolts. This is what we found. So we had a little more than 17 centers. Some of the responses came in a little late, so I couldn't include it. This was actually just nationally presented at Trauma Center Association of America. Everybody is blinded, but you can see on the left, so just this field locator 14, capturing the correct type, which is type 5 for trauma. We had really struggled with that. So we had a lot of centers, you can see indicated in the light pinkish red shading there, were under 10%. A lot were under 50%. And then I just put in green if you were like greater than 90%, and there's very few that were capturing type 5. And I'll tell you why I suspect that's true in a second. And then on the right, it seems like we did a better job capturing the actual claim, the charge on the claim. So that was much better. So about half were over 90%, and none of this really mattered. It didn't matter what level trauma center you were. That it's not like the level 1s did this better, or the 2s or the 3s. It was pretty much a mixed bag. And next slide on this. So some of the themes were that the FL14 type 5, as you saw, had more opportunity for improvement than the charges. Although the charges did have a lot of opportunity, and we need to really understand that. Again, not specific to level of trauma center. So where we think some of the challenges with the type 5 on the field locator 14 was that apparently Medicaid is undergoing a software transition, and this has been a pretty big thing. And there have been some known issues with some National Uniform Billing Code, or NUBC, as you may all have heard. There have been some issues with translation with some of those coding requirements that are not exactly aligned, and we suspect that this might be one of them. Our colleagues at the Georgia Hospital Association have been very helpful in helping me kind of understand this, and as we look to figure out how can we correct this so that everybody is compliant with NUBC and that it's aligned with Medicaid. Some of you are saying that you've changed your practice with the type capture based on Medicaid rules, and others I'm hearing that, well, we're still typing them as 5, and we do occasionally, or we are having success in getting paid for it. So it's very variable. So we really need to drill down on that a little better. So the next step's really more education. We need to really understand with our colleagues at GHA and TCAA have also offered to help us with this. A lot of you went the extra mile. I'm so proud, and filled in the OFIs and barriers. And those were kind of all over the place, but most of it was really, you identified that you needed to have this team, this finance team, get together and look at these claims more often, because I think there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding about how this goes down in your building. So we appreciate that. And then here we are sharing these findings with all of you. That was one of the goals. And then again, working with the Hospital Association on the Medicaid coding. And then I think the next steps is really, and I know everybody's busy with the readiness costs, and I feel like we're kind of flogging things at you like a freight train, but we really need to look on that claims side to determine, again, we don't want to know anything about the finances or money, but just the level of success that you're getting paid for it. And if not, I think it would be helpful to have a work group to get together to look at denials to figure out why claims are getting denied, if they indeed are. And I'll wrap up with that, Dr. Walker, and I'm happy to take any questions. I know that's a lot of information, and we'll save this as PDF. We'll send it out to you.
This is great. Thank you so much. Lots of hard work that went into this, and thank everyone of the centers that participated. One comment that I have on the final bullet, looking on the claim side, that might not be as heavy of a lift or as big of an ask. I think most hospitals have some sort of, denials activity going on. So of course it's just a matter of how we can most easily capture that without making it a burden. But from an administrator standpoint, that's a big deal. We have to track those denials because we work those denials and do the best that we can to try and get them overturned or figure out, why it's being denied. So maybe that's not as big of a lift as the original ask, because a lot of people probably did not have the committees that they had to pull together to do the actual worksheet. But I bet you finance, I know in our facility we've got a whole denials team, so just getting them to drill down into trauma claims may not be that big of a lift, but certainly something to consider.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dr. Walker. I appreciate it. And I think too, showing what is happening, particularly with Medicaid, at least we have some control over that, right? I mean, we could certainly go forward, and if there's denials happening from a group perspective, right, it seems like we should have more influence over that since it's our own state's process. I think some of the third party ones might be a little bit harder, but if if we can work on what's happening within the system for our own our own state first, that might be really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And then hopefully when they complete the transition to the new software, I think that will go a long way towards overcoming some of these hurdles. I don't know about necessarily all the denials side of things, but I know that with that software, until we get the new software in, it's just going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other questions or
Can I just
comments?
add one thing? Sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Pam. Just to add on to that, my revenue cycle side has really pushed back on using the type 5 on any of our patients, because we did do a couple of trial runs with commercial payers, and it cut our reimbursement in half when we submitted them as a type 5 instead of a type 1. So I think we may have some work to do on our contractual side, and I don't know if other centers are experiencing this as well, but we are sending out non-compliant NUBC claims, and I think we need to look at what our commercial folks are paying.
That's a great point. Definitely, it's going to come down to making sure all of our facilities understand their contracts with payers. All of those are going to be slightly different. But I mean, the fact that you all were aware or are already aware of the difference between those, private payers and what they're looking for, what your contract says. I mean, that's the level of granularity that we want all of our centers to be, to have and to understand for you and your center. What is that trade-off? So that's excellent that you all have already identified that. I don't know that we've done that level of work at our facility, but I think that's something we can all take back to our finance teams to have them, look into that and then, see what we can do. So thank you for that, Pam. Other comments or questions? All right, excellent. Thank you, Liz. Now we will be moving on to the level 1 and level 2 readiness cost survey work group update.
That says Regina. Is Regina on the line? I think she was gonna do an update on this.
I don't know that she's on. I didn't check to see.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the readiness cost survey, we had that introduction webinar occur on April 11th. So that's where the readiness cost survey was introduced, reviewed, and we stayed on for any questions the attendees had. And just to bring to your attention, we do have optional webinars for Q&A. The first one is occurring tomorrow, May 6th. And then we have June 13th, July 17th, August 15th, and September 19th. So it is occurring monthly. And that's optional, drop in. If your team has any questions, we're here to support. The survey is going to be due September 30th. And then we have a timeline between October and December where we'll utilize Warren Averett to audit the data that we received. And we should have a final report for you all on January 21st, 2026. And again, these are the upcoming webinars for questions. And then all the information is also available on our website. We have a resource hub where your team can navigate, download the survey, look at the FAQ. All the webinar recordings will be on there. So we do have a resource for you all. Any questions on the readiness cost survey?
Do you want to pull up the resource page? That looks so good.
Sure.
I think for level 3s and 4s, when we get around to redoing the survey for 3s and 4s, we will definitely set up this resource page, because it's just a one-stop shop for everything, and Gabby laid this out so well. Can you all see that?
Should be, yeah.
So just from our homepage, you can.
If you go trauma.ga.gov, there's a link right at the top to go to the resource hub. And then here's the resource hub, has the who, what, where, when, why, the tool, contact information. And then here you can find the resources. You can download the ACS standards, previous publications. You'll see that timeline there again. And then for those webinars, the registration links are on here. Webinar recordings and webinar presentations. So hopefully this is pretty comprehensive and helpful for your teams.
Excellent. I love it.
And I think there's probably a maybe 50-50 mix, 60-40 of people who have done a readiness cost survey before and folks who've never been involved in it. So one word of advice is crack open that survey tool and start looking at it, because you got to at least know what you need to look for. I will say that the group did an amazing job updating the survey tool from the orange book to the new gray book standards. There are some nuances in it, and that's really what the webinars are designed for, is folks who are just struggling to come up with some calculations around things. You know, we can certainly share. Tracy joined our work group, Tracy Johns from your shop, Dr. Walker. She is an amazing resource for this, because she really understands how to get in with some of the calculations for some of the on-call things like radiology, for anesthesia, some of the subspecialties, some of the more nuanced things. And also she's been through a transition where you guys have been bought out by a larger system, and some of the, you know, nuances that occur with that as well. So the whole idea behind the webinars is to just get on and ask questions, because if someone has a question, chances are someone else is struggling with that item as well. So, and Jessica Story has been with us since the beginning, doing these surveys, since I think from the second one. The first one was a real sort of down and dirty, just a way to, get some raw data. And of course, we didn't have that many level 1s and 2s at the time, but Jessica's been with us for the duration. And so she's got a lot of really good tacit knowledge about how to do this. So
She's with Warren Averett.
Jessica's with Warren Averett, who is our auditing firm, who does your uncompensated care, and she's done the readiness costs with us.
That's all we have on readiness, unless anybody has questions.
Okay, any questions or comments? Thank you for showing us this resource hub. I like having it all in one place there.
Gabby's even got the publications there on the bottom left, so you can see the reason it's due in September is because Jessica from Warren Averett has to do testing on it. There's, similar to how you would do statistical analysis, financial auditing has its own formulas about how they select items, their own methodology for how they select items for auditing. And so Jessica will ask for information, and in order for her to get all that turned around and get the analysis done, because we really need that at the end of September so that we can have it all prepared and ready to go for the next legislative session. I'm not sure what that's going to look like or if there's going to be an ask, but it's just good, even if there isn't a specific ask. It's good to be armed with that data for when we get questions. And I think everybody's really curious to see what the impact of ACS verification has had on the readiness costs.
Definitely. All right. Thank you very much. We will keep it moving. Our last new item is going to be a new ESO registry update. Pam's going to give us that update.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the trauma registry is basically the heart of what we do as trauma programs. We collect data on every single patient who comes through who is admitted to either who has an injury, who meets our NTDS criteria. It's basically how we benchmark. It's how we see how we're doing compared to other centers. And it's vitally important to everything that we do. Several years ago, the 3 major registries were bought up by ESO with the intention of sunsetting those registries and building a bigger and better product, basically pulling the best from each of the registries. I don't know if you're aware, but Grady has been a beta site for the new ESO registry that actually was supposed to start 2 or 3 years ago. We delayed going live because of our review year, and then we started doing our build over a year ago. It was last April when we started doing our build with the new ESO registry. We are now a year later in May, and we are not live yet on the new registry. We've had several issues in terms of the functionality. We still do not have our GQuip template or our state template, so we can't test anything. There's not a lot of visibility with the program in terms of being able to see how it's mapping our data. There are huge issues with report writing. So some centers are using Insight. And that works for small centers who don't do a lot of research. And if you cannot do multivariable reports with that, it's very, very difficult. And I'm not hearing of a good solution coming from ESO. The one solution they have given us is to purchase Snowflake on top of the registry. The new registry is very, very expensive compared to what we used to pay for registries. I don't know what other folks have been quoted, but I can tell you ours more than doubled in price just for the registry, and the Snowflake adds another $30,000 a year to the cost of the registry. And in addition, you have to have a staff member who is trained in SQL, which is it's a very prolonged training and it's hard to sustain. I worry about turnover and how we can sustain that. I have asked ESO what their long-term plan is for report writing, and they keep telling us they have a solution that they think is going to work, but I haven't seen anything concrete from them in terms of a solution to the report writing problem. I know Wellstar has been able, they have one of their level 4s is going up on it. The only people in the country that have been successful in going up on ESO, there is one level 1 out of Columbus, Ohio that has gone live. I think they run about 2,000 visits a year. And actually, I think their person who did all the report writing is now working for ESO. And many children's hospitals have done okay with it, but they don't have near the complications that the adult centers do. And they don't have near the volumes. I can tell you with Grady having more than 10,000 registry entries, this registry is not working for us. We do have a group with the registry subgroup who has been looking at other registries that are available, but I wanted this group to be aware that this is an expensive product and it isn't working well. I've had some long discussions with Gina and Liz, and I just wanted to bring my concerns because it is a part of our PBP that we are using ESO for our registry. So I just wanted to bring it up for discussion and see what our options are in terms of moving forward. My next review year starts January 1st, so I have a lot of concerns in terms of this new registry. And we don't have a sunset date yet for our current product. Did I summarize that well enough, Liz?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Pam. I wish it was better news, but
Well, and we are also on a group called BEAT, which is Beta and Early Adopters Program. And we have a monthly meeting. And I can tell you there is another large system in Colorado that is probably pulling out of ESO as well. From my talks at a major conference last week. And when we open that BEAT meeting, we say, what's going well? Nobody can say what's going well. And that is my concern, is they don't understand the nuances of a trauma registry. They're an EMS fire registry that's trying to add trauma into what they do. And so they don't have the understanding of trauma that our trauma registry needs.
Thank you. This is the perfect type of discussion that we really need to have at this committee, particularly since there are dollars involved, and that is always top of mind with hospital administrators. So I had a couple of questions. One, you kind of already answered in terms of, is anyone having success with this? And it sounds like, particularly if you're a large, very busy center, this product is just not going to meet your needs. Perhaps the smaller centers could make it work. So that was one of the questions that I had. And then, Liz, I guess, can you help us understand the history behind ESO being being tied to PVP, and whether or not we have any other, options from that standpoint?
yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate, it's almost like I teed you up for that, Dr. Walker. Yeah, so the reason it's in the contract is simply because, and I know you guys have heard a little bit about this in February when you attended our big in-person meeting, is that the commission made a $1.4 million investment in a risk adjustment benchmarking platform called Arbormetrics. So the goal was to take our data and put it into, we're basically replicating what Michigan has been the state that has led the way on this. And we're basically replicating what they have in place. And the goal was to really get more timely benchmarking, because TQIP, national TQIP, although it has tried to get a little bit more ahead of the game and give you back more contemporary data, you really can't impact a patient 18 months after the fact, after they had an event or a mortality. So we wanted to try to get a little bit more contemporary data and have those lead measures that help you, so that you don't find out 18 months later that, oh, you had a patient that had this, and, you could have had some lead measures to show you were kind of going in the wrong direction. So that was the whole goal with that. And so Arbormetrics, as we have launched it, is really a 3-year pilot, because it's not something that you could stand up and build all the infrastructure around and then in a year figure it out, right? I mean, we're not quite halfway through year 2 with it, and we're just now launching the risk adjustment part of it. And part of it's because there's been a lot of delays on the Arbormetrics. And I think if you can catch the theme here, it's that software entities tend to overpromise and underdeliver. So these things take a long time to stand up. So we simply wanted everybody to stay on. Georgia Trauma Centers have historically always been on the same platform. That, until 5 years ago, was Digital Innovations. And some of you on this call know about Digital Innovations. They sold the company about 5 years ago to ESO, and ESO took over that product and then determined that they were going to sunset that product and go on to their new product. The commission, and really GQIP, wanted everyone to stay on the same platform, because with that 1.4 million investment in Arbormetrics, we wanted to make sure that we were comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So the one thing that the Michigan group shared with us early on in their journey was that they had a state that every trauma center was on a different registry product. And I remember Dr. Mark Hemela, who's the physician lead for MTQIP, saying that, he thought there was one way for a patient to die. You were just dead. Well, that's not the case in the trauma registry, because you could be death, you could be dead, you could be mortality, you could be mort, you could be expired, there's a number. So they had to spend all of that time mapping all of those different ways that in the different proprietary trauma registries you could be a mortality. Someone had to be in the background mapping all that over. Well, that's a lot of time and money, and we don't have a Dr. Mark Hemela, so we wanted to just make sure that, again, we're comparing apples to apples and using the same software. But as Pam just indicated, there's been a lot happening in the registry environment. And I know a lot of you, the commission's been committed to supporting particularly the rural centers. The costs of the registry have gotten exorbitant. They've gotten really out of control. Particularly, I think the biggest jump was with the lowers, because some of you, and they're going by bed capacity. So some of the level 4s, I think some of you are paying around $15,000 a year for your trauma registry. And that's what I was paying about 7 years ago at Grady for the trauma registry. So there's been a lot of cost to it, but really the reason there's been a lot of cost increases. So we're well aware of that, but really the reason was to just make sure that we were all submitting the same data and that we were measuring the same things, and we didn't have one center who was out there doing it differently, or a couple centers who were on different platforms. That would mean that everything would have to be mapped over. I think we've learned a lesson that these systems are so proprietary and they just don't talk to each other, which is the reason that the commission, when GQIP needed a repository, we went with ESO, because again, we just wanted it all to come over cleanly. I think, there's been some struggles with our colleagues at Office of EMS and Trauma, because they went to ImageTrend for their central platform. And again, the data, they just don't cross over cleanly. So that really is the primary reason, Dr. Walker, but I wanted Pam to share her experience, because I want everybody to know, if you've got a registrar kind of screaming at you, hey, on your call, ask what's happening with the registry. We understand that this has been a really tough transition and the market is changing so rapidly. And we want to leverage that registry work group to try to figure out what the best solution might be for everybody moving forward. And we want to keep cost in mind, really. This can't continue to spiral out of control. We have to figure out a good solution that checks all the boxes.
So just to be clear, there is a registry work group that's sort of evaluating this whole thing.
Yeah, and I think we'll have to expand it to be, Gina and I have had a lot of conversations about this. We'll have to pull in more. It's primarily being driven by the GCTE. So it's a group that's primarily comprised of trauma registrars, but I think we'll have to get some medical directors in the mix. We may even need to pull in an administrator or two, just to make sure we're being multidisciplinary about it, and we can take into consideration some of the things such as cost and make a recommendation about where we go. I don't want people to think that we're stuck and like we have no allegiance to using this product, because what it is, it really was driven by Arbormetrics, but we see the future as wide open. And again, there's a lot changing.
Okay, all right. And so ultimately for now, and Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, you're still using your previous version.
Correct. Yeah, we are still on the old V5 product right now. And I am not going live until, we don't even have the templates yet for GQIP or Georgia. So that's my concern, because I am not going live until we have fully tested things. And I can tell you, we have found things that nobody else did that had gone live. We've broken a lot of things for them. As we've tried to, I've had a full 0.6 FTE dedicated to this for the last year, if that tells you anything. And I know most centers don't have that type of FTE to dedicate to bringing up a new registry.
Right. Well, we're thankful. We're thankful that you have that, resource, and that you're sharing, your experience with the other centers that don't have that. So, I think that's the benefit of us being a part of this group and being able to learn from each other and hear what other people's experiences are. So kudos to you and your team. And Liz, looking forward to, that expanded registry work group. I certainly think this is, from an administrator standpoint, a priority as we think about, in the future. And also the quality. I mean, going back to the reason why we're doing what we're doing, and the quality of the information going into the registry. We all know, we've all heard that garbage in, garbage out. So we need for this product to be good for a number of reasons. So looking forward to that, but appreciate the update. Any questions or concerns for Pam or in relation to the registry issue? All right, so that was the last thing on our agenda. Looks like in the chat, there's a few takeaways from the meeting, but we always will, of course, send out the minutes. Gabby, will you put up the QR code for anyone who joined after we took that down while I just verbalize? So please make sure that if you did not sign in, here's the QR code again so that you can make sure you get your credit for attending today. Just a couple of important updates. The Georgia Trauma Commission meeting is coming up here in a couple weeks on May 15th. And then in June, the FY26 contracts will be distributed. And then our next Administrators Committee meeting is going to be Monday, August the 4th. Any final questions or comments for the good of the order? All right, very good. Well, thank you all so much for your attendance today. Hope you have a great rest of your Monday and a great week. Take care.
Thank you.